and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, here with my co-host, Bethany Ruff.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the show, Bethany. And today we have another awesome guest to introduce to you now. Pete Jacobs is a world champion endurance athlete and an energy, health, and performance coach. In 2012, after finishing second place in the Ironman World Championship the year before, Pete broke through and won by 5 minutes, becoming an Ironman World Champion. Despite his successes on race day, Pete lived through 2 decades of poor health and fatigue. This led him to his new mission in life. He became a certified health coach alongside his wife, Jamie L., and they have dedicated their lives to helping others. They founded their company, Live Your Own Fit, which provides holistic lifestyle advice. They also host a podcast by the same name, Live Your Own Fit, where they invite incredible guests that cover super helpful information about health and wellness. Pete Jacobs, welcome to Boundless Body Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. I don't know how you feel about listening to your own shows, your own podcasts. For me, like when I hear the intro music that we use for our podcast, it like makes me a little bit emotional because like we've been able to use this to interview amazing people like yourself all over the world. And I just kind of like to hear it. Your intro music on your podcast is the announcer of you coming up to the finish line, people banging on the banisters on the side. Like, how does it feel to hear that over and over and over again? Do you ever get sick of it?
I mean, I think it's emotional every time a little bit. And so I guess I do and I don't get sick of it.
It's so cool. I get chills and I wasn't even there. Like, I think it's really cool. Well, dude, you're calling us from Australia. How's everything going down there?
Yeah, really good. Loving it. It's kind of, tail end of summer and beautiful weather. And yeah, it's just great. Up, as I said to you before, the sun is up at around 5 a.m.-ish or so. So I've been awake for an hour and a bit. So it's, perfect.
That's great. Well, I want to talk about the race. You have such a cool story of how that went. And I want to address that, but I almost want to like reverse engineer this and talk a little bit about what you have going on now and what you're working on. And then we'll kind of tie that in with your life and your story. So tell us a little bit about what you've had going on lately.
What's going on? So I guess right now I get asked a little bit like, am I done competing? Have I retired? And the current answer is like, I don't know. And I don't need to make that call, but I haven't raced professionally really at a high level for a few years. I took 2018 completely off because health issues were not getting resolved, even though I was kind of chatting to some amazing people like Dr. Phil Maffetone and getting help along those lines. I still wasn't figuring out the bottom line. And so 2018 took completely off. And then start of 2019, I was chatting to Dr. Paul Mason and was able to find or go down that path of, hey, carnivore may help. And it was great because I'd been keto for quite a while and, listening to hours and hours of podcasts saying don't eat too much protein and, just eat heaps of high fat and that kind of path, and was not getting any great results. And so to go carnivore and realize, fiber may be exacerbating my IBS and plants may be exacerbating my IBS, and my fatigue and inflammation and all of that. And that's the part about the nutrient density of a carnivore diet came in a little bit later. But at the start of 2019, that was like, okay, I'm feeling better. Things are getting better. And I got back into just racing some 70.3 Ironman races. So like half distance Ironmans for that year. And then I was doing moderately well still room for improvement at the start of 2020 and did a race in March and that was it, Then everything kind of locked down and we had some lockdown and all races cancelled, all bets off. And it wasn't terrible though. I did have a little bit of a niggling issue going on. And then, so I mean, we'd been focusing on building up the business for a while. But then it was the last several months has really been an evolution of what is the business. what am I selling? Like, what's my target market? What's my product? And all of that. And that has required basically just learning more about the body. That's where I'm at, where every day I'm like having little light bulb moments of, oh, okay, if I explain it this way, or, oh, that bit of research makes that theory that I had fall into place. So now I can go and tell people that. And the product is definitely around, mitochondria. And it's one of those evolutions, like going from keto to carnivore to a mixed high nutrient dense diet, and then back again. Everything evolves constantly, and business, my diet, my personal goals and personal development, I mean, it's all the same. Everything's constantly developing, which is interesting, because when you do post something out that may be slightly contradictory to something that you posted years ago, you always get the occasional troll that wants to point out that your viewpoint has changed, and
Sure.
you have to point out, thank God I'm changing and evolving,
That's right.
because otherwise I wouldn't have learnt anything in the past few years, clear. And you kind of go, well, I'm glad you're happy in your stagnant way of knowing everything that you know now is everything that you're going to know. So yeah, that's where I'm at, I guess. Just trying to come to terms with that. I will be wrong in the past. I've been wrong, and I'll be wrong again in the future. But
That's okay.
building the business and the product and getting through to more people is like the current priority. And there's no way that I could be doing being a professional triathlete and those hours of training at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, we just had Professor Tim Noakes on the show not too long ago, and talk about the king of somebody who had to change their mind and took a lot of flack for it over the years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you mentioned mitochondria. We talk a lot about energy and fat burning and metabolic efficiency on this show, but I think it'd be great to take a deep dive with you on some of these things that you've learned. I would love to, learn some of the things that you've learned, and hopefully we can also change our minds and be wrong about things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The word energy just came up when I first sort of went, not keto, but more went carnivore, where it was suddenly like, okay, it's like no carbohydrates whatsoever. And people pose the question to you, as I said, over Twitter or social media, and it comes across as a bit of a trolling, but they go, well, why don't you just eat some banana bread and you'll have more power on the bike? And it's like that. And then, they're completely wrong, but you can't explain where's the energy coming from, I guess. And it's not just this carbs or fat kind of discussion, it's energy discussion. And so that's when energy first popped up into my head. And so that was quite a while ago. And only lately, so energy's been my passion. What is energy? How can I get more of it? Certainly the perception of energy has been a big thing on my mind for even longer time, a much longer time, going back to, 2012 and the Hawaii Ironman. And perception of energy is a huge thing. And the whole central governor theory, which Tim Noakes proposes, I love that. And so I'd gone quite deep into perception of energy and all the things that your mindset can do to increase your perception of energy, make your energy last longer through being calmer and, state of mind and in the zone and all of those things, flow state. But energy itself was now the focus. And it's like, okay, how do I learn about, and how do I learn what energy is in a way that matters to me for my health and performance, but also matters to somebody who is having a high carbohydrate diet or doing this or doing that? Like, how does it cross all barriers to explain how our body gets energy? Because it's very confusing, especially in the performance, athletic performance world, where everybody uses the word energy incorrectly. They use it for the gel that they're eating. Oh, I ate some more energy and, then I felt better. And everything about that statement is kind of wrong. So I just wanted to try and get to the bottom of how can I change the thinking and my thinking around what energy is? How do I just clarify what it means. And yeah, so a lot of hours putting pieces together about energy has led me to being able now to put everything in terms of health and performance in a context of what is your energy production like, and how does that, what you're doing for your health, affect energy production. It's almost like, as you said, reverse engineering our health by asking the question, well, if I do that, how does that affect my energy, my efficiency to produce energy? And how does it lower the stress of the byproducts of energy production? And how will something increase my overall energy production? So yeah, that's my energy story in a nutshell. And it's super exciting now to be able to look at so many different things that I've experienced in my lifetime. And, this has been part of my mum's journey as well, with autoimmune issues, thyroid issues. She's been on, medications since I was born. And that's the interesting part of the story, I guess, where a lot of my issues come from, because I obviously have inherited a lot of the mitochondrial issues from my mum, which is where you get your mitochondria from. And yeah, in the last 2 weeks of her pregnancy, she was hospitalized with, high blood pressure and put on medications since then. So we've had this journey together. So it's been great that I can kind of put some of my theories into practice to help mum. And then she will ask me questions that question what I'm telling her to do, or my theories, and all of that in a practical sense that she can put into place. So yeah, mitochondria and energy production are the root of all health and well-being. That feeling of having more energy comes from literally having more energy.
What were some surprising things that you learned about increasing your energy? I mean, I think you're right. I think most of us just throw around the word energy and we're talking about, fat or carbohydrates, the two fuel sources that come from food. But what other sources, or I guess what other practices have you found that can help increase energy that may be a bit of a surprise to the listener?
Well, definitely being present. So anything that makes you present, whether it's just a quiet mind, or whether it's a thought of gratitude, or whether it's a quiet confidence that you get from telling yourself that little bit of "you got this." So the athletes that I do coach currently, we really focus on that when we're coming up to race day. So in the weeks leading up, and this is exactly what I did leading into 2012 Hawaii, was just having a trigger phrase that creates presence, that brings you present, that takes away all your doubts and fears and worries that exist only in the past or the future. So when you're present, there's no ego, there's none of that. So taking away that feeling of anxiety straight up gives you more energy. The hormones change, your mindset changes, you relax, your breathing changes, and everything then stays more calm and controlled as well. So you're using less epinephrine and adrenaline and cortisol for those other kind of energy pathways, and you're using you're not having to use up that pain tolerance, which is a great aspect of the central governor theory, is that you will actually, if you do something in a high anxiety state, you are going to dig into these hormonal responses that will run out in time. So your pain tolerance at the start of an event, if you have to go, flat out at the very start, it's going to diminish by the end of the event. Whether it's, an hour or 8 hours, you can't push the pain threshold the entire time. You are going to diminish that ability for your mind to push through pain and have the same motivation, the same strength, and the same energy to do so. So that's one aspect of that I really enjoy teaching my people about and talking about. And then the other thing would be all of the cofactors of energy production. Everything like, from ribose to L-carnitine to iron and selenium and nutrients, elements. The periodic table of elements is literally as simple as it needs to be. We're all made of stardust, and if you are lacking a certain element of that stardust, then that can really cause issues. And likewise, having abundant source of all the nutrients that we need to produce energy will help increase energy also. So those, and whether you get it from a kinesiologist doing muscle testing with you, or whether you just do trial and error of some higher doses, it doesn't really matter how you end up at this approach. But having tested it is really important for filling in those gaps, because everyone listening to this podcast is listening to it because they don't feel they have all the answers to their own health and wellness. They are looking for something else. And at the moment, there's in medicine, there's no way to test for this stuff, which is, I think this will be one of the biggest advances in the future, is when we can actually test what's happening in your cells. Like what nutrients are you lacking? What's happening? What's the fats, the proteins, but more importantly, the minerals and the vitamins. If you could just pull out a cell and say, oh, this is what's going on, this is what we're lacking. I mean, imagine how quickly we would be able to resolve so many health issues and fatigue issues in people if we could do that. And then the flip side of that is all the things that you can do to reduce the byproducts of energy production. The stress that causes a heart attack, the stress that inhibits energy production at the end of a race. How do we become more efficient at energy production to not have as much stress build up? And so the first thing is you wake up after having had a great night's sleep. Everybody knows that, because you get rid of the stress overnight. The hormones do their thing. They clear out all the rubbish. You wake up, you're less insulin resistant. You've got more oxidative pathways available and open, and the efficiency for producing energy on that day is greater. The flip side is you have stress in your cells still when you wake up. And because of already existing stress, it compounds. So it's harder to produce energy. There's more oxidative stress. So it's like once there is oxidative stress, you increase the oxidative stress as you go ahead and do your day and produce more ATP, which is energy. In athletic terms, that's really easy. Most people that have done base training and have a bit of an idea of what's going on in the body know that if they went out and did a sprint or a bunch of sprints and high intensity heart rate stuff at the start of their 5-hour bike ride, that 5-hour bike ride is going to be exceptionally harder towards the end because of the sprints that they did at the start. And it's got nothing to do with that they didn't use up any energy. I'll say calories. They didn't use up calories that therefore meant that's why they didn't feel as good towards the end. So that old adage of burning matches at the start is not burning your stores of glycogen, and that is why you run out of energy or being able to have energy towards the end. It's that the burning of the matches means, yes, you did burn glycogen, but that in itself created stress. And that stress then inhibited the rest of your training or the race, and it accumulated and compounded throughout that time. So that's the first thing, of having less stress accumulated and more energy. And the next would be so you have a good night's sleep, and then it would be other factors, inflammation from food that you've eaten. So whether it's, through leaky gut, or whether it is through spiking your blood sugars, and whether it is, you've had an allergic reaction, or whether it is you've eaten poor oxidized fats that have created poor cells. So the cells themselves are unhealthy. So that energy production is slower and communication is not as great. Maybe you were deficient in nutrients before as well. So it comes back again to central governor. All of this sort of in the context of central governor theory is like the state of your cells on the start line is a big part of central governor theory. But then the real part of it is the central governor is the brain. So you take out this whole side of it is the state of the cells when you wake up in the morning. And so, yeah, have you got all the nutrients that you need? Obviously, we all know the main ones, and we'll all accept these main ones of, oh, yeah, we need magnesium. If we're low on magnesium or sodium, our energy production will be inhibited. And we accept these things hands down. But then when you say to someone, oh, well, why don't you take a bit of, selenium? Or why don't you try taking potassium? Why don't you try taking these other less mainstream elements? They'll kind of look at you and go, oh, I don't believe in supplements. And you get this, weird, ironic position where they're taking supplements because they believe they will help because, and so much of our life is based on beliefs. And that's such an interesting side of how everything works as well. But then when it comes to other supplements, and this is another evolution that I've been on many times over the years, is the evolution of when I've taken supplements or when I haven't taken supplements and on and off the bandwagon constantly. Well, now I am totally like, oh yeah, obviously if I believe that magnesium will help me produce energy, then I believe all these other things will. That's why nutrient-dense food is so important. And that is why I do take supplements now of CoQ10, of L-carnitine, of all of these other aspects that help fill in those little gaps. And then you put it in a context again of athletic performance, and you can tell these people like, well, you are producing more ATP than a sedentary person. So you are using more of these elements in all of these products and all of the, ways of producing energy. You're creating more ATP. So you are using more of these up. So it makes sense that you have a higher requirement to restore and replenish these elements. So that is where I'm at with supplements. Yeah, the more you move, the more nutrients you need. And nutrients are the key factors for keeping that energy level high, not calories, because you're not going to run out of calories. You don't run out of fat at all. Like, that's just not possible. Like, you've got to go on that TV show alone before you really start to know what running out of calories is like. That it's basically a competition to see who can starve the longest. And then you're not going to run out of glycogen, because as much as people say glycogen is the limiting factor of performance, I totally disagree, because nobody gets to that end of a race like so low in glycogen that they collapse. And this is, I guess, back to that central governor theory. What is making somebody push so hard that they get to the end and basically fall over and collapse and cannot move? And you just don't see that. The Olympic marathon, you just don't see that happening. You don't see their whole body shut down because of lack of glycogen. So and because of the flip side, it's easy to continue stop topping up your glycogen stores throughout an event. You can easily, have a gel and a Powerade and all of that stuff to keep glycogen stores there. So the argument for that our energy is limited by how much we can digest and take in through a race is pretty flawed, because just looking at reverse engineering, what is stopping somebody from performing well? Is it lack of glycogen? Well, let's do a bunch of muscle biopsies and see and take their blood sugar and see what is actually happening in all of these people. And I would be extremely surprised if it was if there was a conclusive result where everybody who thought that their limited glycogen stores was the actual answer. So it's more around the buildup of oxidative stress and the health of cells and the nutrients available. So is that long enough answer for you?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking of an analogy. I don't know if it's a perfect one, but maybe you can tell me if I'm thinking along the right lines. Let's say you've got, a pickup truck, and in the back of the pickup truck, you have, tanks of gas. You're not going to run out of gas. The fuel's there. You can go wherever you like. Totally fine. But rather than worrying about the fuel, it sounds like you're trying to fix the engine and make the engine work better and use the fuel better. Is that a proper way to think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly right. And an analogy that I also use is, there's a couple of different ones, but one is, yes, you want to have the V8 truck that burns a lot of, it can create a lot of energy. You want that ability. So that comes from having an amazing engine built from nutrients, amino acids, fats, minerals, and vitamins. So the engine structure is made of that. But you also want the ability to be a massive gas guzzler, I guess, at the same time, and put your foot to the floor and open up all those 8 cylinders and go where you want to go really fast with heaps of energy being produced. And at the same time, the other side, a different way of explaining metabolism and energy to people that I use is also that you are the hybrid. That when you look at, if you were just looking at calories alone, and that's your fuel is calories in this instance, then if you're a hybrid car, when you get to, let's say you versus the V8 go, 100 kilometers, so the exact same distance. So you can actually measure the output of how far you've traveled. The hybrid will actually use less calories, and that is what you want to be as well. So different analogies, try and hang with me here, that you will, when you are healthy and have a healthy cell mitochondrial structure and healthy metabolism to use lots of fat and recycle all the byproducts and use all these nutrients and other pathways for energy production and recycling, you will use less calories. So a low metabolism is, that's ancestral. That's evolutionarily. That's what we want. We want to use less calories for the same amount of ATP production. And so that's where I question all the metabolism, people that are selling metabolism. They're selling, stick with my program. I get you to eat more, increase your metabolism, and then you'll lose weight doing X, Y, Z. We can't measure metabolism on, anybody unless they go into a lab. And then you can't actually measure the output of ATP to figure out how efficient they are. So you put 2 people into a lab and measure their metabolism and get a perfect result. But you can't actually measure anything to do with their efficiency and health of how much ATP they produce from X amount of calories burned. So you've just got way too many variables when you talk about metabolism, and it doesn't actually answer anybody's question of, am I healthy? How do I get healthier? But it doesn't change that, yes, people can get results with this belief. As with any belief, it doesn't need to be the reason why something occurred. But if you believe it's the reason, then, that's all that you need, and that still worked for you. Just because the belief is wrong doesn't mean it won't work and you won't have the outcome that desired. So for a lot of people focusing on, being sold this, and they stick to a plan, and the belief of, I'm increasing my metabolism, which in my view is incredibly inefficient. And it will happen for a time, like especially when you change from a high carb diet to a low carb diet, you are increasing your metabolism as you get healthier, and you're still in that process of wasting ketones through your breath, and all the pathways for recycling energy aren't great. So a low metabolism can be healthy, and it can also be unhealthy depending on what mechanisms are going on. And then generally though, when someone does do that sort of a plan with someone, that they're chasing increasing their metabolism for increased results. Whether the metabolism changes or not doesn't matter. When someone's actually putting an effort and believes that they're going to get a result, then they're going to exercise a little more. They're going to feel better about themselves. So they're going to be happier. Their nervous system is going to be more relaxed and healthier. There's less stress produced. They're more aware of what they're eating. So they're going to not just maybe eat slightly more calories or less calories, it doesn't matter, but they're going to eat healthier food, more nutrient dense food in this pursuit of being healthier and losing weight at the end goal. So yeah, beliefs are a funny thing and really interesting aspect of how the body works as well.
The placebo effect at its finest.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's super interesting. So how did you come down this pathway to begin with? I mean, like we said in the introduction, you had some pretty severe health issues. It sounded like that started from day zero for you. What happened with your own health? I think a lot of people just assume that if you're doing any kind of endurance sport, if you are a triathlete, if you're doing Ironman, you're a very healthy person. And that may not always be the case. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I was probably around 15 when I first went to swim training, and I could not get my heart rate up. No matter what I tried to do, I could not push hard. And, you just sort of put it down to, oh, okay, well, I just can't. And very frustrating at the start as a teenager. And the tests started from there, and they increased and increased from hair, urine, stools, bloods, so many different doctors.
Wow.
And this is all, in the next few years, with not a single answer of what was going on. But at the start, it was maybe a day, maybe it was a few days. And then I finished school. And so it's hard because looking back, it is hard to look at, because I was naturally quite smart in school up until about year 10. I really enjoyed maths and English and did well in exams. But then once this fatigue feeling hit in my sport, it correlated exactly with not being able to do anything at school. So procrastination, total inability to focus, just distracted constantly. So whether it be in class or at home, like at home was the worst. It was this feeling of total anxiety of, oh my God, I've got homework. I have to sit here until I complete this assignment, and literally not being able to do the assignment and just sit there and feel anxious and procrastinate for hours. Looking back at that memory is probably the most frustrating thing of all the effects that it's had on me. So anyway, we'll move along. And then I did my landscape apprenticeship when I turned 18. So that was 4 years of laboring and learning, skills of gardening and hard landscapes, which is like stone masonry and a bit of carpentry stuff, that sort of thing. And in that time, I got into triathlon then. Before that, I was sort of swimmer, runner, did a few things. And then I got into triathlon. And by the end of my 4-year apprenticeship, I went overseas and went and, I did a couple of Ironmans professionally, and I did quite well. I was 5th and 4th in my first 2 professional Ironmans, and qualified for Hawaii in 2004 in my first year as a professional. Wow. And the qualification process is very different now. So I went overseas and trained overseas and pushed my body really hard, but I had this physiology PhD guy, friend of mine, helping me out. So he was getting me into fat burning. He was kind of getting me to do the low, almost no carb after a training day, and then go train the next day and do a bit more simulated race stuff. So from that first year as a professional, I was introduced into really optimizing some fat burning pathways. And however, I'd still been experiencing fatigue on and off. It would pop up one day and I couldn't move for a couple of days, and then the next day it's gone. I feel amazing, and I would just be like, yeah, I've got this. So I went to Hawaii though, and I was just fatigued on race day and just didn't want to do anything. Pulled out after the bike ride because I could not get my energy up. I couldn't get my heart rate up. I couldn't push hard. And alongside of that, of course, comes all the anxiety and mental anguish and all of that as well at the same time. So I didn't finish in my first professional race at Hawaii, and came back home. And the next year, the fatigue hung around quite a lot, it seemed, for many months. I think I actually came back and did an Ironman. So it was still that kind of like, feel terrible, race an Ironman, feel terrible. And race an Ironman came, but I really spent a lot of time for the next few months, I think, just sort of at home playing Xbox. And I'm, really lucky that I had really supportive parents. And I remember that year actually being the worst that it ever felt, because I would try to go for a bike ride, and the overwhelming feeling of anxiety was almost had me in tears. I would ride 5 minutes from home and almost be in tears, just trying to go for like a 40-minute bike ride. Wow. And, so I guess from that early stage, that is what taught me about being more present and controlling my ego, because I was not able to do what my body wanted. So that's kind of the ultimate lesson in ego, is spend a lot of time not being able to do what you want to do. You can't. And then, over years, it's like there was no chance that in training I would be able to keep up with other people in training, because a lot of the time in training, I just had to stick to the limit that I could manage on that day. So that really taught me a lot about just controlling ego and believing in my own path and my own journey, and what I was capable of doing was different to what them. And I just had to back myself for race day. Races came and went. I had some great results. I'd have moments of fatigue, but they'd be fairly short-lived, and I'd be, able to keep training and racing and do moderately well in that next time period. And Len, we just basically went through that up and down process for the next several years. It was actually after my first Ironman in 2002 as an age grouper that I said, I think I can be the best in the world. That heart of hearts, that instinctual feeling of, I think I can do this. So it was 10 years of following that goal of, I think my body is capable of doing that better than anybody else. And so it was sort of like a top 10. I came 8th and then 9th in 2009 and 2010. 2011, I placed 2nd, and was starting to really get it together and put all the pieces into place. And then that triggered the mindset for, okay, I need to do everything, because next year winning is the only option. So there was a real shift in mindset from what I believed was possible, which I'd had for 9 years. And that last year was very much, I want this. And, what do I have to do to get that result that I want? And then training went really well, best I'd ever trained, looked after myself, the best I'd ever looked after myself. So there was more supplements. There was even less junk food. I was never really into junk food most of the time. And there was more sleep, more massage, more recovery. And I really, my motto was a couple of things, was very much turn my weakness into my strength. So turn my weakness of not being able to train as much as other people, turn that into my strength. So control my ego, take more rest, listen to my body. And that just worked incredibly well. The other process that I had was any three things a day that contribute to me doing better on race day. And so 3 sessions could include a massage, a nap, and a walk. That's
counted. A good day. That's a good day. I like that day.
So every single Monday, I did no training whatsoever. On Monday, I had this routine. So I had that kind of pattern, that routine where I didn't need to think what was happening on a Wednesday. I didn't have a coach at this point, I got to point out, because I had a mentor that really helped me build that inner quiet confidence with, analogies and metaphors, and he would feed me that quiet confidence. But in terms of what I was doing in training week to week, day to day, that was up to me, because I knew my body really well by that point, that I had to just listen to it. And I had a schedule that really worked, that didn't require anything to overthink it. So yeah, I would train on my own by that as well. Obviously, that's a key part of my success, was training on my own, going by feel, but also at the same time, I was quite good at pushing when I was able to push. So awareness of my body, that was my strength, awareness of mind and body. So I also had in that last year as well, I was seeing a kinesiologist, and he picked apart and gave me that that trigger phrase that kept me present and grateful. And for him, that was testing, because you come second the year before, the trolls are around, and social media was around at that point. So he kind of basically said, "Oh, you're weak. You need to use the word." And if I used the word love or adoration, I was stronger. And he said, "You need to love everyone. You need to love the trolls, love the doubters, and also use the word love with Jamie and what you do." And so that was my theme and my trigger phrase to make me present and feel strong, was the word love. And I did use it in training. When I'd be visualizing, I'd be doing some harder run efforts, and I would then picture the race, and I'd picture competing against Craig Alexander, the other Aussie. He'd won it the year before, and I would feel weak because suddenly I'm in a sprint finish with someone who's the crowd favorite. He's won it before, and I would feel weak in that run session. And I would use the word love, and it would bring me present. It would make me feel strong, and that I felt that in training before, like quite a few times in training leading up to the event. So that was really one of the things that helped my central governor on race day perform better, because I was using that word. I told my friends and family supporters to use that word. So, they would yell at me, you effing love this, they're like, come on, you effing love this. Because I told them, and I've got a finish line speech that really encapsulates it, how I felt on the day and what got me through in a calm, present state, which I'm not saying that's just this magical energy that appeared. It's physical changes that occur because I was more present, I was calmer. And so, like I said before, different hormones, different blood pressures, different amount of stress from energy production. And most importantly in a race is you make better decisions. So you're not wasting energy, A, worrying about a decision, and B, you are making the right decision. And in an Ironman over, 8 and a bit hours, there's a lot of decisions to make. There's a lot of questions that you ask yourself. So, the word love just really helped. And, so I loved the pain. I loved the challenge. I loved, my wife. I loved my family. I loved the opportunity. I loved the sport. And that was sort of, finish line speech that you can see on my website, I believe. That's pretty cool, I think. And wow. I'm really glad I've got that in something to keep.
That's amazing. We'll have to definitely link to that. Recently, we spoke with Derek Parra. He's a gold medalist in the 2002 Olympics here in Salt Lake City. We got to speak with him twice, and two things that really stand out that you guys both have in common. That one we've talked about a few times on the podcast, and it's visualization. And Derek, we were sitting in the building where he won gold medal, and he would describe visualizing the race exactly the way it was going to go. Every single stride, one after the other, the corners exactly the way they would go. And he would lay in bed every single night with a stopwatch and his eyes closed, and he would click the stopwatch for every lap. And when he was getting really close to the Olympics, the time would be within tenths of a second to his actual lap times, and he would be crying. And so I think that visualization is so powerful. Another thing he said that stands out to me that the two of you seem to have in common is he said that the idea of rising to the occasion is actually a bit of a myth. It's not like you're rising to the occasion. You're just going to where you've already been in your training sessions. It's not like you're going over the top during a race. The race should be the calm, the cool, the collected, and just a reflection of all of the work and training that you put in before that day. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to show up and do some superhuman, effort that you've never done. It's all about being consistent in your training, and that's where the money is. It sounds like you would agree with that.
Yeah, 100%. It's the layers that go into being in the zone. It's not something that the average person can get into if they just go to run a marathon in 5 hours. It's their first ever marathon, and they've never really done any competitive training or racing. And the zone is something you need to practice. It's meditation. It's like meditation. You can't get into this calm state and feel amazing just the first time you try it. You have to practice getting into a state of calmness, into a state of total awareness in the present. And it's something you can practice super easy. You could practice it while the kettle boils. Just stare at the wall and think of nothing for 5 breaths. So that's a perfect way to start how to control your mind. And then you can then take it into a training session. You can even just take it anytime. And I did this whenever I hit a hill in training, when I was running, I would visualize this one particular hill on the course in Hawaii. And it's really steep and it's packed with spectators and it's super hot because you slow down, there's no breeze. And it's the spot, and it's about 18 kilometers into the marathon, I think. And it's that point where if you go too hard, then you're really going to, limit your abilities in the second half of the marathon. And I'd visualized it so many times that, going up it, I was just in this such a state of calmness and presence that you can block out the crowd. And I kept my head down and I knew the form that I was going to keep. I knew what I was going to do with my hands, and I knew what I was going to do with my feet, my breathing, my mind. So I'd practice that particular spot, which is one of the crux points of the race, so many times in training that, it was, I've said it a few times since, that the race day was just like the full dress rehearsal. I'd done it so many times before that there was not even the pressure of opening night. It was like, oh no, we're still in rehearsal. It's just full dress. We're doing everything that we've done in practice, and being able to remain calm and confident in that time. So heaps of similarities there. And just trying to think the other thing you said, just practicing being in the zone is not something that just happens. And I like that point of race day is not anything greater than anything you've done in training. And that is, something that I really talk about with my clients is you are more powerful when you're relaxed. If you're tense, and anytime you're out there training, if your shoulders start to tense up and your breathing changes, you have to be aware of those changes, and you have to stop and walk, or stop and just stare out at a view, or use your trigger phrase, or all of the above, ideally, and get rid of that tension, because you need to train your body to operate in a positive cycle of energy and hormones and all of those things. So if you went out and every time you trained, you hated running and you tensed your shoulders and your breathing was shallow and sharp, and your mind was saying, I'm heavy and this feels horrible, those combinations of tension, mindset, and breathing just totally influence one another in a really powerful cycle. And you can either make that cycle really positively, in a positive way, or it'll be in a negative spin. And so, being aware of when that is coming on in training, stopping, getting rid of it, the power that flows is incredible. And often it may mean, you may need to stop, but as you get better and better at it, and this is something that I'd practice a lot in training as well. And running was, on my long run in training, I would get to the point of, okay, I can feel that tension. My mind is slightly starting to be like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable. When do I get to have a break? that is exactly when I would take a break. I'd splash some water on my face, have a little sip, have a little taste of something sweet, and do a couple of like dynamic stretches, mobility type things quickly. And so maybe I'd stop for like 30 seconds to a minute, mentally reset, and get going again. So the practice of resetting is what I was just talking about before. And that is what I get everyone to really focus on, is you need to practice resetting so that the tension can build and build. And then boom, you've got a trigger phrase or a habit or an action that brings you present. And then you're able to get going again as if it's the first step of the day. So in an Ironman, there's heaps of aid stations. So it works perfectly to do it with a splash of water on your face, a taste of something sweet, and walk the aid station. And then you get to the other end of the aid station and bam, you are fresh as a daisy. You're a completely changed person to what you were when you entered the aid station. And that needs practice though. So that ability to be aware, control it, reset it, and then keep it underground is, just what you need in practice.
That's very well explained. I love that. You guys have a similar thing going to us. We have our own business that we started last year. You guys have had your business working together for several years. What are you guys working on for the future? Anything exciting and new upcoming for you?
Well, I'm currently just trying to get all my information that from my experiences, especially in the last several months, of putting all this into a point of energy. And so it doesn't matter whether somebody is struggling with their health, like my mum, who actually, funny, she also wants to be out there cycling. She also still wants to keep active.
That's great.
But it doesn't matter whether that or whether you're in the performance realm or whatever it is, the feeling of having more energy is the same for everybody. Because if your mitochondria, if your cells are healthy, if you're producing good energy within the mitochondria, then that drives everything. Then that will improve your hormones. That will improve your digestion, because your body needs energy for the cells that are in your digestion, in your intestines. They need energy just like your muscles need energy to run a marathon. So everything gets better and can operate better, handle more stress, recover from this stress better, doing the exact same thing no matter what ailment or performance factor it is that you want to improve. So that's sort of my focus, is getting all of that down and incorporating all of these mindset, breathing layers. So there's basically, several layers that it's very difficult, as you've heard me talk, it's very difficult to pick one layer without incorporating how they all interact with others. You can't say, oh, mindset, oh, you just need to be tougher and effing do it. It's like, no, we need to talk about how that mindset changes the reactions in your hormones, which change the physical reactions in your organs and your digestion, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, so that's what I'm getting closer to, having that as an online course and taking people through as a group through that. So I'm really excited about that, because as you can tell, I love talking about this stuff. And no matter who you're talking to, there's so many different nuances to how all the questions that can come in from a person individually. Should I have, when's it okay to have a bit of sugar? When should I eat this? When should I do that? And yeah, just trying to get through all those nuances of, well, it doesn't matter and it does matter. So there's so many different ways. And Jamie has similar. She definitely focuses a little bit more around helping women change their mindset and really get into that quiet confidence, stop the self-trolling, and start that positive cycle of mindset, which is, the big influencer for the other habits that when we do. And so that's kind of, she comes from that aspect of mindset is the top, and then that makes it easier to change your diet to a healthier diet. Then that makes it easier to feel good, lose weight, have energy. So yeah, she's got this group course as well, just about to start. So we also I'm currently doing a few triathlon programs for people, and Jamie's also writing a few exercise programs for some of her clients. But yeah, and she's working a lot with some one-on-one people as well, and I do as well. And so we're really a bit of everything at the minute, but in our focus in the future, just so that we can reach more people, is going to be like, how do we reach more people? And the group courses, group classes are a big part of that. And then when needed, just having those one-on-one consults with people. And I've got to mention that, the health coaching course that we're doing through this company Precure that are based in New Zealand, it has taught us so much about those one-on-one conversations with people, getting to the root cause of but also their root motivation for things. So definitely getting away from those why questions, and that you end up getting factual answers, and they tell you when they ate this and why they did that because of XYZ. So getting away from those factual stuff and really delving into, what can you do from now? What will you do that helps you get to your goal? What's that plan look like? And around the how are you going to put this into practice? So those kind of, we've really loved this course, where actually, because you do practice in the course, you go into little, one dyad. So you're with one other student in a little Zoom class. Just the other day, I had an amazing session because you practice on one another. And, in 18 minutes, I just spoke for probably 15 of the minutes at least. And the person I did it with, obviously, they were a really good listener. And I just came out with all of this stuff about, what's for me, what's going to help me achieve more day to day. And I uncovered some really interesting things about myself, about what motivates me, about what makes me happy day to day. And, I'll share that with you. And that was coming from a background of creativity. So, when I did my landscape apprenticeship, I was creating landscapes, daily. I'd look back and go, wow, I created that. And that sense of achievement from being creative, I really loved. In all my time as being a triathlete, I've still kept being creative. I've still kept gardening. I still keep doing other things around the house, changing things, renovating things. But the gardening for sure. I learned, all these other things like macrame, and I can't think, but I've done some CNC machining to create like wooden coffee tables and things. I love being creative. And so when I realized that the other day in this conversation, it's like, wow, I need to feel like I've finished something from start to finish each day. So whether it's a really small thing, I need to be actually like ticked that box, so I don't feel overwhelmed and fall back into those patterns of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed, which is as good as I feel now, and I'm still got more improvement with my health to achieve. The habits of thinking and those hormonal issues of feeling anxious are still going to be there. That needs more work, because I've had 2 decades of dealing with feeling overwhelmed and anxious, that I still need to be aware. I still need things in place, as anybody does, really. Everybody in modern day life is really at some point going to not feel like they're getting the happiness and self-worth and achievement that they want from life. But for me, it was, that was sort of it. Let's focus around creativity, make sure we tick something off that you feel as if you have created. And that is why, creating this current course, I'm writing so much. I'm now like, wow, I'm writing so much about all of this. I think I've put this into a book in the future. So that's sort of something else that I really am now like excited about. Like, there's something else I can create. And so that's kind of, where I'm at now, where we're at with our business, and where I'm at with my personal development.
That's great. Wow. That is one of our favorite words, creation. So we're so appreciative of you for creating this awesome podcast today. We're so grateful for your work and your time. You guys are such an inspiration to us as a couple that owns our own business and does a similar kind of coaching. We're it's just so cool to see all the content you guys are putting out on so many different outlets and so many different opportunities for people to work with you. Where would you like people to go if they wanted to start working with you?
Contact us easily, DMs, like direct message through any of our social medias, and we'll quickly get in touch on email, or go to our website, Live Your Own Fit. So my Instagram, Pete Jacobs, you'll find me. Jamie Earl, you'll find her. There's not many people called with her name Jamie Earl. JAIMIELLE. Lucky I got that right. Like I say, our website, it's got blogs, our Facebook page, and my Facebook page, my personal other interactions. So yeah, I'm starting to put out more and more of my thoughts on, just lately I'm like upping that output on like Twitter particularly, because that's kind of good for that back and forth conversation about energy and health and performance. Yeah, we'd love to get in touch with anybody. But I mean, you guys do an amazing job. I've listened to, a few of your podcasts just in the last week. And yeah, I know that your approach is really similar and awesome. And yeah, the guests that you had on, I learned a lot from as well. I really love it. And I really love the deep, was it Tanya who does the deep diving records?
Yeah.
I love that, because a bit like in bodybuilding and free diving, you get these extremes of what the body is capable of doing, and the rest of the world kind of just totally glosses over some of the stuff that they've learned, because we think it's not, that's not what we're doing and it's too extreme. But particularly free diving and the connection with CO2 and health, like CO2 tolerance and getting more oxygen into the cells using higher levels of CO2, of carbon dioxide. I love that. I'm really, really fascinated in that. I do some work with that myself, restricted breathing, and I get the people that we work with really to focus on those aspects of nose breathing. Tape your mouth at night if you are comfortable doing so.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I really love that episode about free diving, and I wish you'd gone really technical in the for like more of like all the techniques she uses to pack the oxygen into the cells. And,
so crazy.
But yeah, it was a really cool interview. But all of the ones I listened to were. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That's high praise coming from you. We've been very fortunate to talk to a lot of cool people, and you are absolutely one of them. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. Pete Jacobs, thank you so much. Thank you for your work. Thank you for everything you do and for appearing here on Boundless Body Radio. We really appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Will do. Thanks very much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.